Hello everyone and welcome to the next episode of the Crawley Town Supporters Alliance Simply Reds podcast. In this episode we'll run through part 2 of the end of season review. My name is Reuben and I'm joined by Louie. How are you, Louie?
I'm good, Reuben. Thank you for having me on as always. How are you?
Yes, I'm not doing too badly, thank you. I'm struggling this week, but thankfully with no football at the weekends it gives me a bit more time to recover. Although with it being the EFL playoff finals this weekend, it'll be interesting to see who gets promoted into or out of League Two, and even into League Two from the National League.
Absolutely. I
So,
think we're all Walsall, aren't we? This weekend, we're all Walsall.
oh yeah, 100%. I don't want AFC Wimbledon to go up because that's a great game for us to go to. And who between Southend and Oldham do you want to come up to League Two?
Southend, absolutely Southend. Not on a away day that I've actually been able to do, and it's fairly local. And I know a couple of Southend fans, and I'd be absolutely delighted for them. They've been through the ringer in recent years, so I'd be delighted if they went up.
Yeah, although Oldham do some great food. And last time we were there, I think it was the game that Lewis Young had to take charge
Ooh,
after John Yems had his
would that have been?
incident, I
Would that have
think.
been? So that would have been the 20. That would have been around Easter 2022. It was just after Wagme took over. So would we? I feel like I know. The only game I really remember from that period is Sutton away, where we got beat 2 or 3-0 or something. That was our first trip to Sutton, and it wasn't a particularly fun one.
No,
So
it was not. Well, let's get started then. So last time we covered from August through to December, so now I'll just kick us off from January. Then in January we started off. I think we were still recovering from that 4 draw against Exeter, which ended our 2024 year. But going into January, we headed up to Barnsley, where we lost 3-0. We then drew 1-1 with Burton, then lost 2-0 to Stockport, then won 1-0 against Mansfield. Any memories, Louis?
yeah, a really weird month. Obviously, we started off with a postponed game against Chelsea. I think that was New Year's Day, wasn't it? Which was a bit of a blessing for me because I was pretty ill that day. I picked up a cold and it started to kick in that day. So that was a bit of a blessing. Um, and then the performance at Barnsley, I remember we just didn't get going. We were 3-0 down at, was it half time again? 3-0 down at half time, and
Yeah.
then
Uh,
we played all right after that. But obviously the damage is done, and we actually had chances. And at the start of
so,
the season, we didn't take our chances. But
so actually,
it's academic at that point, really.
so Barnsley scored in the 11th minute. Then a player known as Max Waters scored in the 51st minute.
Ah,
And then Kelly Dunn scored in the 54th minute.
that was it, yeah. And then it was after that we started to actually play. They probably stepped off us a little bit, and we had a few chances. We didn't take them, but it's all academic. Once you go 3 down, especially away from home, you're just, yeah, it's done. And then obviously the Burton draw, Tola Shawunmi with a great goal. And again, it's a weird one where you can see, particularly in front of goal, he's someone who's got a lot of ability. He's scored some good goals this season. That one at Charlton, and then the one at Burton. With he's 2-footed. He's scored goals with both feet. It's a weird one where you can see he's got a lot of ability. It's difficult quite to know what level. Whether if he's a player who we have going into League Two, you can see him causing defensive problems, but he didn't get a minute under Scott. He's barely in the squad. Under Scott, he didn't get a look in, so I can't imagine we'll see much more of him next season. But I also have a feeling there's a decent player there who would do a good job at that level. But anyway, that's for another discussion. So sorry, which game came after the 1-1 draw with Burton? Oh,
Then we lost 2-0 to Stockport. At
Yeah,
Stockport.
yeah. Not a disgrace to go away and lose at the team. End up finishing third in the league. Not a disgrace by any means, but again, another performance where we didn't really get going. I don't think we had. Was that a game where we didn't have any shots on target? I feel like we didn't give our old friend
Yeah,
Corey
none
too much to
on
do.
target.
Yeah,
Expected goals of 0.19.
I mean, yeah, that pretty much sums it up. They were very comfortable against us, and then we followed that up with probably one of our best performances under Rob. The 1-0 win at Mansfield, where they had a couple of decent chances in the opening 15, 20 minutes from what I remember, but so did we. Will Swan could have had a couple that night. He was very lively. I think that's the first time we saw Will Swan play at wing back.
Yeah, I think so.
And he actually looks all right. He did a good job, but he looks more threatening than he did up front, which was interesting. Obviously a really good performance, and that's the performance that makes me think if we'd had Matt Cox in goal for the whole season, or at least for the whole second half of this season, because his distribution was unbelievable. He was pinging passes through the midfield, and it was like, hold on a minute, this is how. And I feel like if we'd have seen more of him, particularly under Rob, I don't think we would have struggled as much, because we were never. I think we were never comfortable playing out the back under Rob, and that's obviously his whole thing. His whole thing, like Scott, is to play out from the back. You know, draw the opposition on, so you play through their press, get in behind them. I think it's a bit more of a rigid structure if you compare it to how Scott does things. But if you have a goalkeeper who can make passes like that, where he can pass 40 yards up the pitch through to Hepburn Murphy, who I think was up front that night, or to whoever was playing alongside him or playing off of him, it makes a whole difference. If you can just go through the opposition and take out 6-7 players like that, and we never had that for large parts of the season, and you have to think certain performances in certain games would have looked a lot better if we'd have had a keeper who we could play out from the back with reliably. So yeah, but that was a top performance from us. And am I right in thinking? No, I'm not right. I was about to say it's the last time we won under Rob, but it wasn't. It was certainly one of our better performances. A really resilient performance that we didn't often see this season. A rare clean sheet, particularly away from home. Yeah, that was probably one of the highlights of
I think
Rob's
so.
tenure, I would say.
I think
it's the sort of performance. Sorry, I'm rambling on a bit, but it's the sort of performance which you think, oh, hold on a minute, we've still got it in us. And I did think we'd kick on a little bit after that, because it wasn't a lucky win. I know we had Charlie Barker making a clearance off the line in the dying seconds, but it was it's a sort of performance where we showed some quality, we showed some resilience, and you thought, hold on a minute, Rob can still get a tune out of these players. It's not a complete write-off just yet. But obviously it wasn't to be.
Yeah, I think with the goalkeeper situation after during the Mansfield game, it's probably the first time where I realised just how poor Jojo was and what a difference actually a good goalkeeper can make to a team. I think had Matt been able to have stayed, then I think we'd have ended up being okay.
Yeah.
Because even after, wasn't he signed that
That
day?
afternoon, yeah. Him and Kamari Doyle, they were both announced. And I think Kamari came off the bench that day. But I think they were both announced sort of mid-afternoon that day.
So Doyle was announced the day before, so on the 27th. Cox was signed on the 28th. And probably our worst January signing was also signed on the 28th of January. Do you remember who?
Rory Feely.
Correct.
Our friend Rory. I mean, I don't like to get on his back too much. It's not his fault that he was signed. It's not his fault that he wasn't quite up to League One standard.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like if you were to be offered, if say Preston was to be knock on your door right now and ask for you to join Crawley, and you'd be put on the bench, or you'd be playing on Saturday, you're going to take it, aren't you?
Honestly, I mean, I'd think twice about it just because I know my knee wouldn't be up to it. I've got a dodgy knee that I've had since I was 14. Otherwise, I would have gone pro, obviously.
Of course.
Yeah, it's if you're a professional footballer, and also you back yourself to try and compete at that level, and it's a challenge. And I feel like there was one game Feely played, and when we come on to it, I might remember that there was one game where he started, and he didn't really put a foot wrong. I can't remember what game it was though. It was under Rob, but it was possibly was it Reading at home, or it was a game there was a game where he started, and everyone was like, "What? What is he doing?" And we either kept a clean sheet or we got a result. I know he started against Cambridge, but I don't think that's the game that I'm thinking of. But anyway, I digress. I'm going off on a tangent here. But yeah, so after the Mansfield game, we obviously that was the last game in January, wasn't it? So we move on to February. I think.
It was. But before we go, because there's also a January transfer window, we mentioned a couple of the players that joined us, but we also got rid of Jay Williams, who
Yes,
went to MK Dons, but we also did bring in Ben Radcliffe,
we
who
did,
was the
of
first
course. Yeah,
signing of January.
absolutely. I think he was. He's someone who I'm really excited to see how he develops next season because he's just. I it was a difficult situation for him to come into as a young centre back coming in, jumping up 2 leagues into a team in a relegation fight that's struggling. But he never looks out of place. I never looked at him and thought, Jesus Christ, what are you doing in League One? He's physically quite capable. He's strong. He's fairly quick. He's good on the ball as well. Which you kind of expect coming from Gateshead. And if that's they're the sort of centre backs we want to sign, he looks like. I mean, if he looks like that good in League One level, he's going to be some player when he gets a full season in League Two. And I hope he's first choice next season. I hope he gets a lot more minutes. I know Scott kind of relied on him for the last few games of the season, mainly due to injury. But again, he looks absolutely brilliant. So really excited to see him next season.
Yeah, and we also got rid of Ronan Darcy as well to Wigan.
Our sweet Prince Ronan.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's obviously a shame to see Jay and Ronan go. They had their own reasons. I believe Ronan wanted to be closer to family. I think which is completely fair. And Wigan are a fractionally bigger club than us, so it's understandable. But yeah, it's obviously a shame to see them both go.
Yeah, 100%. But kind of away from the playing side, Louis, how would you describe Crawley Town Football Club as a dish?
Um, I mean, if we're going off last season, then it's a dish that's gone off and it's been left in the fridge for too long.
because
That's as kind as I can be about.
because in January was the infamous Crawley Town brand identity
Yeah,
questionnaire. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what comes out of that now, because we haven't really heard about it since. But of
no, of
course, with
course.
Ben leaving, Ben Levin, vice chair of Crawley, leaving, and it was his kind of project. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that.
Maybe we'll never know, and that could well be for the best because I feel like it's not a bad idea to do that sort of survey, and some of the questions were fair enough. But some of the questions. I mean, some of the questions like, how do you feel about Crawley, the town? How do you feel about those kind of things? Yeah, they're absolutely fair enough. But yeah, some of the questions like, what food do you associate Crawley with, or what if you had to redesign the mascot? What would it look like? It was ill thought out. I think it's the kindest way to put it. But anyway,
Yeah. So moving on to February then. So we lost 2-1 to Wrexham, which I know is a bit of a painful one to talk about.
yeah. But we're going to talk about it because it will be a crime not to talk about Bradley Ibrahim's goal. If that's the only reason I want to talk about it, really. And
Okay.
also, I made a big thing in part one of our season review of how many games there were. I think I said there was 14 games where I thought we deserved to get a result of sorts, or either a point or 3 points. And this is one of those games because, again, Wrexham. Not only did we equalise with an incredible 30-yard volley in the 89th, 90th minute,
90th,
Wrexham cheated their way to a 2-1 win. It was a blatant foul on Jeremy Kelly from, I think it was Elliot Lee who scored the winner.
yeah.
And not only that, Wrexham were bang average. In both games we played this season against them, they were bang average. I have no idea how they finished second in League Two. I've watched them 4 times over the last 2 seasons when we played them. Had the misfortune of watching them play 4 times because in none of those games have I been impressed with them. When we play, it baffles me. I don't understand what makes them good because you look at them, they're not a particularly impressive side. They're very well organised defensively. They're not going to let in many goals, but they're not. I could sit here for the next half an hour ranting about them, but it's one of those games that infuriates me that we keep losing to them because they're not that good. We always
Yeah,
seem to put in a good performance and just not get the result we deserve.
I think for me it's more annoying because had we have got a result from that, even a draw, it would have been a big result for football.
Yeah.
Like you've got Wrexham who have got players on stupid amounts of money, and actually we should have got something from that game. And it'll be interesting to see how Wrexham do in the Championship. I think it's probably a bit of a make or break situation for them and their owners because they've always been the top of their league or up in that way. Whereas in the Championship, I don't think they will. I think they'll buy some players on big money. I mean, there's talks of, um, is it John Joe Shelby?
I've seen Tom Kearney as well from Fulham on like
Yeah,
55 grand a week or something. I imagine they are a very ambitious and well run club who know what they'll need to do to compete in the Championship. But then, yeah, certainly they won't be. I don't think they'll be in the top half. They might finish mid table, but anything above that, I would be quite surprised. Just purely because of it's the money coming down into the Championship from the Premier League at the top end. So you got teams going down like Southampton, Leicester, who will have however much money Wrexham can spend, they'll be able to spend 10 times as much. So I think they do well to stay up. I think.
yeah. And then we go on to another frustrating game, which is probably up as part of your 16 games. That was the game against Bolton.
Yeah, that is very much. I think that's a game that everyone kind of can point at as a game that could cost us massively.
Yeah, because
Quite
we
a
can see.
frustrating one because obviously, Rory Feely comes on, makes his debut, I think,
Yeah,
gets sent off 10 minutes later for 2 yellow cards, and it's another one where I don't entirely blame Rob because I think at that point the squad was quite thin. He had to try and keep fit players on the pitch. I think that was a game where Panucci got injured for a couple of weeks. That was Matt Cox got a hamstring injury, which obviously cost us massively going forward. It was and then I think it was was it the fourth goal, Belton's fourth goal, which came from the free kick that was taken too quickly. The referee hadn't even.
I think it was their third goal because it wasn't the last
Oh,
goal.
sorry, the fourth goal was there was an own goal, it was a cross, wasn't it? Yeah. So the equaliser should never have counted. I think their second goal came from an unlucky deflection, a shot into the box, and then it just bounced at the feet of their player. There was nothing really we could do. I know that people will point the finger at Rob for that game, and I understand why. There's probably ways he'll probably, if you asked him, and I'd love to be able to talk to him about his time at Crawley one day, but that's probably not possible. But anyway, I think if you asked him, he would probably say, "Yeah, there's things I could have done better," but it's not necessarily his fault. The referee, their equaliser shouldn't have counted, and there was a bit of misfortune with a couple of the other goals, particularly the winner. So again, it's a game where if we hold on, we stay up. If you look at the points tally overall, but that's not how football works. Sadly, I think it feels like kind of after that point, that was probably. I know we did win another game under Rob, which we'll come on to after this point, but the Wrexham game and the Bolton game where we came so close to getting something in those two games, you can almost look at that as the beginning of the end. If you look at how the rest of Rob's time at the club went, and particularly going into March, which was just a bit of a disaster. Yeah,
it was. So moving on then. So we did get a result in the next game, 3-1. Harry Forster, Armando, and Kamari Doyle scoring against Stevenage.
Yeah, and that was a really good performance. It was a game where we deserved to win, particularly the second half. Because I remember before Forster scores, it was one of those games I feel like we created a lot and just nothing was going. I think the keeper made a couple of good saves. There was a couple of blocks. We were playing well, and it's like, the goal's never going to come. It felt like one of those games. So it was a relief because it was we went a goal up, and then I think Stevenage equalised, obviously from a set piece, and then after that we peppered them, and I think it was possibly it was the second goal where it was a shot that was saved by the keeper, and then who got the second goal? Sorry, Armando tapped it into an empty net, and that was. It was almost. I just remember feeling relieved because we absolutely deserved. We peppered them. We'd had chances, and it felt like it just wasn't going to go our way. So, yeah. And if you look back at the sort of that run of games from obviously the Barnsley game wasn't good, the Stockport game wasn't good, but the run of games, there were some good performances in there. Like we should have got something against Wrexham. We should have got something at Bolton. We obviously beat Stevenage. We got a draw against Burton, which no one was particularly impressed with, and there wasn't much to separate us on the day, but we possibly could have won that. There were some performances in there where you kind of look back. I mean, you kind of think it could have been very different if we'd just picked up a few more points under Rob. It wasn't. Ultimately, he probably did have to go, but there were some good performances there. It wasn't all. I don't think he's a lot of fans would probably say he's clueless. He was out of his depth. I just don't think that's entirely, and I think those performances are evidence that it wasn't entirely the case.
Yeah, because we then went on to play 2 home games where we drew 1-1 to Wickham and then drew 1-1 to Wigan.
Yeah.
So 2 W's. And I mean, Swan scoring for us against Wickham.
That was a lovely goal. That was a lovely finish with the outside of his foot. And again, that's another performance against a team who, at the time, I think were second or third in the table. And we more than matched them. And it's maddening to think there's so many of these games where you're like, actually, we were capable of playing well at this level, even under Rob. The Wickham is frustrating. It is really frustrating. Just this is why when Rob got sacked, I did really feel for him because I could see the potential in him as a manager and as a coach. And games like the Wickham game, the Wrexham game, the Stevenage game, where the performances over this period of time were actually pretty good. He just wasn't getting any luck. It was almost like you need a bit of luck.
Yeah, you really do. And if a couple of things went our way and whatnot, then this could be a whole different story. We could be preparing for another year in League One.
Yeah.
But for now, it's going to have to be League Two. But then we headed up north to Blackpool, where we lost 3-1.
And this certainly was the beginning of the end, I think. If that Wrexham, if whatever game I said was, I think this actually probably was the beginning of the end for Rob, because
I think so.
I think this is when people really started to turn on him, sadly. I think this is when...
I mean, it was a painful game.
Yeah.
And we were losing 2-0. Doyle then scores in the 30th minute. Ashley Fletcher then gets sent off for Blackpool in the 32nd minute. So for 60-odd minutes, we're now playing against 10 men. But then they ends up getting a penalty in the 79th minute, Blackpool, to go on and cement their victory of the 3 points. But one of the benefits of League One has been being able to go to other stadiums and whatnot, being able to go to the likes of Blackpool, places that probably not many people have had the chance to go to before. I think the League One tour has been enjoyable when it comes to visiting new places, visiting new stadiums.
I hear Pop World was very busy the Friday night. I know you were in there, Reuben.
Oh yeah, of course. I spent that night in Fleetwood instead. Oof. Somewhere else we get to spend next season. So lucky us. Lovely place. But that is the end of our results for February. And despite it not being the January transfer window, we still made a few transfers, both in and out. So Rafiq Khalil, who was, I think, our longest-serving Crawley player, left to go join Dagenham and Redbridge, where Lewis Young was manager. Liam Fraser joined. So joined on a 6-month contract. So that's finished now this season. But I think they are, at least they're saying they're looking into signing him on a more permanent deal. Would you take Liam Fraser in League Two?
Absolutely. You know, I think it took him a while to get up to speed, but once he did get up to speed, you could see he was just very sharp, very good technically, and just a step ahead of everyone else in terms of how he read the game and his positioning. So I think in League Two he would be. There's a few players that we've got that in League Two you think they'd be a bit of a cheat code almost. They would be an absolute joke in League Two. He's one of them. I think he would be. He doesn't look. He's not an all-action midfielder. He's not someone who necessarily stands out statistically or in terms of goals or assists. But yeah, if you watch him play, you realise just he keeps things ticking. He gets you going from back to front. His positioning is excellent. Yeah, absolutely. He would be a standout player in League Two, I think, which is why we won't keep him, obviously.
Yeah. And so we also let Jack Rolls go out on loan to Gateshead. We also signed Louis Watson as well. Somebody who I think people were a bit apprehensive about, especially reading what Charlton fans are saying about him. I don't think they were that impressed with Louis.
I think, from what I remember, they were quite complimentary of him, but they said he just had injury problems, which obviously we've seen ourselves. He missed the end of the season with a foot injury, I think it was. But they were saying like if he gets a run of games, he'll be a very good player at the level. But there is always the fact that we're signing a player who had been released from a League One team in the summer. No one else had come in for him. There's obviously a reason for that. They're not particularly good, which I don't think is the case with Watson because we've seen enough of him to know that he's got a lot of ability. And again, he's someone who we will have next season. Hopefully, he's under contract, and he will be very, very good in League Two as well. But I think either they're not good enough or they have fitness issues. It tends to be the case, and with Watson, it is his injury issues and his fitness issues. So, I mean, if he gets a good pre-season under his belt, I don't think it was a particularly serious injury. It wasn't something that was going to keep him out for more than a couple of months. So hopefully he gets a good pre-season under his belt and we can see a lot more of him next season.
Yeah, but February was not without its controversial moments. So we had a fans forum with Preston, which led to the infamous 10-minute standoff, asking for an apology. Then there was the Guardian article from was it former kit man who is taking the club to a tribunal. I think the last update for that is it's not going to take place for another couple of months.
So we got some good press to look forward to in the summer then. Just as we're getting towards. So if it's in a couple of months, it'll be the middle of July. Just as we're looking forward to the new season, we're halfway through pre-season. We might be playing our first couple of pre-season fixtures by then, and God knows how that will go. Obviously, we can't comment on it. We don't know the ins and outs, but it's a bit of a distraction that we could do without, really.
100%, and publicity and that sort of thing is not when the word slavery is mentioned.
I mean, the amount of times not just this season, but over the last 3 seasons. Admittedly, last season was very quiet off the pitch for the club. We were quite a normal club for the most part. But the amount of times I've just got a message from one of my friends they've seen something about Crawley in the news and they're going, "Mate, what is going on now?" It's got to the point where I just keep saying 1 normal week of Crawley. That's all I want. Just 1 normal week. But one day we'll have peace and quiet.
But moving into February then, so it didn't start very well because we lost 2-0 to Cambridge and then lost 4-1 to Lincoln.
Yeah. Rob's tenure at the club rapidly unravelling off the back of the Blackpool defeat at the end of February. To follow it up with a really tame performance against a pretty poor Cambridge side. I think it speaks for itself in many ways. It wasn't good enough. It was a game that we had to win, really, to boost our survival hopes. It was seen as a must-win, as all these sort of games are, really. Like, as soon as we got to March, every game was a must-win. But there was just no urgency. We never got going in the game. We just gave away 2 soft goals, another goal from a set piece, I think it was, for their first goal. Although I have a feeling I cannot bring myself to go back and look at the highlights. So if someone wants to correct me, then please do. Otherwise, I'll assume I'm correct. But I feel like the first goal was a foul, or there was some sort of foul in the build-up to the first goal. So if we go in 0-0 at half time, perhaps it's a different game. But I've got a very distinct memory of there being some sort of foul for that goal. And then, the second goal was just really poor. And then you go to Lincoln, and this was such a weird game, right? Because I remember the first 10-15 minutes, we go goal up very early on, and we looked really good. We were playing through their press. We were looking quite lively. We were getting the ball forward. And I was quite surprised because we put out a pretty weak team that evening, from what I remember. Kamari Doyle scored a tap-in from a rebound, I think it was. And we looked like... we're going to a team. I think they were without... I can't remember his name now, but one of their centre-backs was suspended, who measured up as one of the best centre-backs in the league, if you look at his sort of numbers and his stats. So I was thinking, hold on a minute, we've gone... And Lincoln aren't a particularly impressive team. We beat them 3-0 earlier in the season. They were 14th or 15th when we played them. Not a side that you should fear. We looked all right for the first... we looked good. And then as soon as they scored, they equalised within the first 20 minutes. It was like, Here we go. I think James Collins scored the equaliser, possibly.
Yeah. So we scored in the 6th minute, and James Collins scored in the 14th minute.
Yeah.
I'm really impressed with your knowledge.
It's just, it stands out as being a particularly painful game, to be honest. And then even up until, I think they went 2-1 up not long after that, but it was a second goal from memory where we just completely collapsed after that. We never got going. We just went into our shells, but what can you say? It's just typical of a side that knew they were getting relegated. We started brightly, looked dangerous, got a goal, had something to hold on to, and as soon as we got pegged back, we just kind of lost any sort of real belief. And then you go another goal down, and it was just a bit of a capitulation from there. We were poor after the first 20 minutes.
Yeah, we were really poor. I think particularly after that Cambridge game, I think that was the moment, at least I probably realised, because Cambridge also fighting down in the bottom, that, this might be it.
Yeah.
There's no hope now of getting back. We can't even get a result against Cambridge, who were probably bottom.
I think they were 24th, 23rd, yeah. They were certainly bottom two.
But then we had an all-right result against Reading, where we drew 1-1. That was thanks to a 90th minute goal by Panucci Kamara.
Yeah, it was a really nice goal as well. I think it was a little flick with the outside of his foot. Kamari Doyle with the assist. Again, at this point, Kamari Doyle was literally the only good thing about this football club. It was ridiculous. Like, for those few weeks, he was scoring goals, he was creating goals.
Yeah, he was.
That was a weird game where we looked all right. And Reading weren't a particularly impressive attacking side this season. So, unsurprisingly, they scored sort of midway through the first half, I think it was. But we could have been a goal up before they did score. And it was kind of one of those, we could have got 3 points. But we probably wouldn't have deserved it. A draw was probably a fair result.
I think it would have been. But then went off. Well, we still at home. We lost 1-0 to Charlton,
which that was a frustrating one because we defended quite well that night. I remember against a rampant Charlton team at the time. They were absolutely flying. They were probably the best team in the league at that particular point, just in their form and the way they were playing. And if it wasn't for, again, don't like to dig players out, but if it wasn't for a goalkeeping error, quite a soft goal to let in, of all the chances that could have gone in that night, it was the goal that Charlton did score was very avoidable. I think it was Malarkey got caught trying to dribble out defence. The ball switched over to Thierry Small, I think it was, for Charlton, who then just fired it in at the near post. And I only
How do
remember
you
this
remember this?
because it was right in front of me. I was standing pretty much right behind the goal, or just to the side of it, and so everything was happening in front of me. And yeah, I just remember being really annoyed with Jojo for letting it in because it was basically right at him and it goes through his hands at the near post. So yeah, another game I think that is a game where we probably should have got a point. We never really had much of an attacking threat, but we defended fairly well, apart from just another game where we shot ourselves in the foot. And there's probably 25, 30 of those games this season. I'm not going to recount them all, but
I think you're probably right. But I mean, it then got worse, and to kind of close off the month of, well, not even to close off the month of March, sorry, but to continue the month of March, we then travelled to Huddersfield. And to be honest, at half time, I was like, this could be double figures. Thankfully, we only lost 5-1. So not so bad. But I mean, that was embarrassing.
That was embarrassing. It was on my birthday as well, so that was particularly, the day before my birthday. It didn't quite ruin the weekend for me. I still had a nice, lovely birthday weekend, but it was just, it was brutal, wasn't it? And it was so frustrating because I think they just sacked their manager as well, hadn't they, Huddersfield? And this kept happening to us throughout the season. I think Bolton, before we played them away from home, they sacked their manager. Burton, before we played them, for the second time, I think they sacked their manager, and they got Gary Bowyer in. And obviously Huddersfield sacked the manager and then instantly smashed us 5-1. And to be fair, if you looked at their numbers going into the game, they were creating a lot of chances, they just weren't taking them. And so they were due to give someone a bit of a thrashing, and it just happened to be us. And of course, it was us.
Unfortunately, it was us.
So, I think after that point, Rob's position just sadly, because I think he seems like a really nice guy, and I think he will be a really good manager, probably at this level. I think he's got a really bright future, but I think it just wasn't going to be a bright future with us. Unfortunately, after that, it was untenable.
It's a bit of a poison chalice. I mean, it's like it's probably like our equivalent of the manager. Like, was it David Moyes who had to take over from Sir Alex Ferguson?
Are we comparing Scott and Sir Alex?
Well, yes, I am. But I mean, it's going to be difficult. Whoever's going to take over, because they're not Scott Lindsay.
Yeah, and I think that counted against him a lot.
Yeah. And so even if had we have managed to bring in Pep Guardiola, it still probably would have been similar. But that Huddersfield game was the last game for Rob Elliott on the 19th of March. Crawley Town brought out the corner flag photo to announce the announced Rob Elliott leaving.
We did it properly with the corner flag photo.
Corner flags. Did you know that if you win the FA Cup, your corner flag can actually be a triangle?
That is a brilliant bit of knowledge. I'm genuinely...
Because Crystal Palace corner flags can now be triangles rather than rectangle or square, whatever it is.
That is proper pub quiz. That is an excellent pub quiz question. I'm genuinely delighted you've told us that. I love those little niche facts. That is superb knowledge.
But people were umming and ahhing as to who is going to take over. There were multiple rumours circulating. Some people not necessarily believing the rumours of Scott Lindsay returning.
I didn't believe them.
I believe somebody might have made a bet, didn't they? That they'd get like Preston Johnson's beards on their leg.
That does ring a bell.
Scott Lindsay joined.
Can you think it would have? I know. Do you know what? Do you think that's why he wasn't available to record this evening?
I think so. Still embarrassed.
Yeah, listeners, you might have noticed that Luke's not on the podcast tonight, 40 minutes in, so you probably have noticed. I believe it's this exact reason he didn't want to cover this particular incident.
Yeah. But it's weird, because so we announced Scott Lindsay at was it 11:30 at night?
It was midnight. It was bang
really
on midnight.
Late.
I think by this point, rumours had circulated and the odds had got very, very, very short, to the point where it was essentially the market might as well have closed on. And I didn't believe it. And then throughout the day, it just became more and more obvious that it was going to happen. Like the odds just kept getting shorter, and you hear things and you see people talking on Twitter, and I was like, oh, it's not happening, it's not happening. And suddenly, at some point in the afternoon, I realised, oh, it is happening. Scott is coming back. Like it just looks like it's happening. Like you look at the odds, you look at what people are saying on Twitter, and it was just like it was a little bit out of the blue. You kind of think something drastic must have changed at the club for him to want to come back 6 months after leaving, because he felt like he couldn't take the club any further, and he couldn't, and he felt like there was a better opportunity at MK. But yeah, just a real lift to everyone. Probably the best decision that they could have made. And I know I initially was quite sceptical when people first started talking about Scott coming back, and that was a couple of weeks before Rob was even sacked. People saying, "Oh, just bring Scott back. Why don't we bring Scott back?" It's kind of like, well, it's not a guaranteed success that he's going to come back. If he does come back, it's not a guaranteed success. You don't know how it's going to work. He wanted to leave in the first place, so why would he even want to come back? But as soon as he did come back, I was like, I'm all in. Do you know what? I'm right behind it. I couldn't be happier, and it did give everyone a massive lift.
Yeah, and I think it's positive in the fact that he came back, because something's obviously changed behind the scenes in order for him to come back. He wouldn't come back unless he wasn't being promised X, Y, Z. And no doubt over the summer we'll find out what those kind of X, Y, Zs are, to be able to bring some players in. And he started off well. Scott won 1-0 at Bristol Rovers, at Crawley against Bristol Rovers, and then 4-0 at Rotherham, which is a cracking result. And I think after those two results, we thought actually we could stay up again.
Yeah,
it probably was a roller coaster of a journey for us. But I mean, it then came crashing back down when we, in typical fashion against Peterborough, we lose 4-3, which I think is probably a result that's been repeated multiple times against Peterborough. Often a last-minute goal being scored.
I really hate Peterborough.
Didn't we get relegated from League One last time when we lost 4-3 to Peterborough?
Yeah, it's the penultimate game of the season.
And was that when we had was it Dean Saunders as manager?
Dean Saunders was manager, and this was very. I mean, I'd have been 17 at the time. So I can't say it was a formative footballing memory. I've been going to Crawley for about 12, 13 years at that point, but it's a memory from my teenage years that stands out quite a bit, just because of
scarred for life.
Yeah, genuinely, I am scarred for life by Peterborough. Not the place necessarily, but just them as a football club. Just them as a football club, and what they've done to me and my beloved Crawley Town. Like that was a game. Dean Saunders was in charge. We were 3-2 up with 8 minutes to go. I want to say Josh Simpson had scored. It was absolute carnage in the stands. We thought because all we needed was. We either needed to win that game, and it was still in our hands going into the final game that season. And we contrived to throw away both games. But I remember after the Peterborough game, fans were singing for Dean Saunders to stay, which was, he had done a good job, to be fair, in the half of the season that he'd been there. But, he obviously didn't stay. He's not done much in management since, I don't think.
He hasn't. But we also signed in March. We signed Timothy Lowe Tatala.
Just a
and
wonderful
again,
keeper,
another case of a goalkeeper making a big difference in those games that he's played for us. And I mean, there's been rumours already that he might join again in the summer.
If we get him in League Two, it'll be, again, an absolute joke. He is not a League Two goalkeeper. He's far, far too good, based on that one game.
I believe somebody asked him if we're going to see him in the summer, and I think he said something like, "In God, I hope," or something like that.
Yeah, I think his response was "God willing" or something.
Yes, that was it.
So because we've been linked with him in January, I think from memory, before we signed Matt Cox, possibly. There were definitely rumours that and we were possibly linked with him in the summer as well. So, but again, yeah, based on that one game, he was just commanded his box. His distribution was good. His shot stopping was decent. Not that he had lots to do, but the cross came. I felt like if the cross came in, he was going to be there. It was like a magnet.
Yeah.
So would definitely, if you ask me, you asked me about Liam Fraser. If I take him next season, I'd take him. I'd absolutely take Mo Satala as well, because do you know what? I think what endeared him to a lot of people was when we scored. Bearing in mind he'd been at the club for about 24 hours.
Yeah.
We scored, and his celebration was like he'd been here for 10 years. He was absolutely loving it. He was celebrating the terrace. He was like jumping up in the air. It was as if he was like a lifelong fan celebrating the goal. It was lovely to see for someone who hadn't been there. Who probably didn't even know what postcode he was in.
Couldn't even point Crawley on a map.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, definitely take him back.
And then moving into April then, so I mean we've already mentioned, we jumped ahead to the Peterborough game, but we ended up having 2 3-1 losses on the trot. Firstly, away to Stevenage on the 5th of April, then at home to Leyton Orient. And I mean, for me, that was probably another moment where I thought, okay, actually, the two wins of Scots are probably a bit of a new manager bounce, as you so often get. And actually, was it the right decision? But yeah, then we went to Birmingham, had a cracking result of 0-0.
Could have won.
Which
could have won.
Had that result have happened in October, November time, I think Crawley fans would have been absolutely buzzing. And it's just frustrating.
Another shout out for another goalkeeper at this point.
Yeah,
because I think Jojo played in the Rotherham game, didn't he? He was back from international duty for the win at Rotherham.
Yes, he was.
Which is an interesting one, because that's arguably a top 5 performance for us this season, possibly even top 3. I know Rotherham weren't in great shape, but to go away from home and win 4-0 anywhere is always impressive. And it was with Jojo in goal. Obviously, it's a one-off result in that sense, but just thought that was notable in that sense. So another goalkeeper this time.
Yeah, indeed. Then moving on from the Birmingham game, we then go at home to Exeter. And I think when we're 3-0 up, and everyone was buzzing, and I was like, "Hold up!" Remember last time we played Exeter?
We've been here before.
Then my long lost cousin Caleb Watts scored in the 26th minute, and we're like, "Okay, actually, can we hold out here?" But thankfully, we did.
Thankfully, we were a normal football club for once. I remember the rest of the game was pretty unremarkable. We saw it out fairly comfortably.
Yeah,
it's a team with very little to play for. So
it was very, very little indeed.
And I think other than picking the ball out of the net, Toby Stewart didn't have much to do that game. It was a strange one.
Yeah. And then we played Northampton, and again managed to get a cracking result against them, 3-0, which is just light years away from the result at their place, with Hepburn, Murphy, Kelly and Doyle scoring.
I feel like what's more interesting is what happened elsewhere for this particular game. That was a cracking result, very good, very professional performance, did what we needed to do. Played them off the park. I mean, I remember chatting to a couple of Northampton fans in the pub before the game, and they were like, "Yeah, you'll beat us. We're okay, but if you've got anything about you, you'll be up for it. You need the win, so we don't need a result at all. So you probably will beat us." And they were right, and we were very much the better team. You could see they were on the beach. They were so far off the pace compared to us. I mean, that game could have been 4 or 5. I think we had so many chances. But it was such a weird game because the second and third goals went in from Kelly and Doyle, and I barely even celebrated them because of
it's so difficult.
Burton beating Cambridge, and then just as our full-time whistle goes at the Broadfield, there's absolute pandemonium in the terrace. And suddenly, I look at my phone, and Cambridge have equalised, and we thought this was it. I certainly
Yeah.
did, and I don't even know if I can bring myself to describe the next few minutes after that, because
Because it was 700 minutes, wasn't it?
something like that.
It was a long time. It was a very long time. And again, that result against Northampton was frustrating because it shows we are good enough
Yeah,
to be able to stay up in League One. It's just due to misfortunes and injuries and whatnot that we're not able to.
yeah,
Then that leads us into our final game against Shrewsbury, which, I mean, it's a bit of a weird game, the Shrewsbury game, because neither of us are playing for anything. I mean, it's one of those games which would quite easily just get 100 people there because both teams relegated. On paper, it's probably one of the worst games of the season, especially also from like an away fan perspective because we'll be playing there next season. So are people that fussed about going?
no,
But we ended up actually taking some decent numbers from memory.
300 or
Yeah,
just,
308.
yeah. There you go. That's pretty good considering. I mean, yeah, it's a theme of our over the last 2-3 seasons. Our away following has been excellent. It has increased a lot. Whereas before we might take something like 60, 70 people up to somewhere like, I don't know, Salford on a Tuesday night. We'd probably take a fair bit more now, and it's a credit to a lot of the fans, a lot of the younger fans that are going home and away now. Yeah, it's a credit to them really. But yeah, so excellent numbers, a nice way to round off the season with a win. But it kind of just felt a bit flat, didn't it? It felt I didn't feel any real joy that we'd won, just because of the heartbreak of the week before. And
Yeah.
it's kind of, I think, with the uncertainty of who may or may not be here next season. I know we'll probably talk about that in at another stage in a few weeks, maybe, or whenever we decide to talk about that. But it's kind of it was, you didn't know. I mean, for example, Jeremy Kelly, he's staying or going. We now know that he is suddenly out of contract despite signing a 2-year deal last summer.
Yeah, I should imagine there's some relegation clause.
That is obviously what's happened, but there's something quite comical about this currently happens to Crawley. If you look at some things that have happened to us over the years, a player signs a 2-year deal and then the next summer they're suddenly out of contracts. Obviously, it's a relegation clause of sorts, but hopefully with Scott being here, that persuades him to stay, which would be I don't think he's irreplaceable, Jeremy, but I think he's obviously just a very, very good player, very intelligent player. And if we do manage to keep him, it's a real sign of ambition. I mean, Preston's come out and said, "I want us to get promoted next season," which is bold talk from a man who, without wanting to annoy him or upset him too much, hasn't always delivered on his words.
Yeah, indeed. And then we finished off the season with the retain list as well. But we asked a bunch of our followers to answer some questions for us. So, Louie, this will give you a chance to quickly come up with your answer. So we asked for the best Crawley player of the season. So a lot of people have put Charlie Barker. So they put Twinkle Toes Kelly, Kamari Doyle, Bradley, Armando. And I mean, we didn't mention Armando actually during the January section when he travelled all the way to Argentina. Argentina was spotted out there.
Just another ridiculous paragraph in this chapter in this season. Just very Crawley, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah.
I mean, God knows what happened there. It seems to be like an issue with the paperwork not going through in time. I think that's the official line, at least from the club. Obviously.
So who would be your player of the season?
I did vote for Charlie Barker in the club's player of the season poll.
Yeah,
that was after much deliberation because for a side that conceded 80 goals, and I'm not saying that Charlie's had a bad season at all, but it's difficult to pick a defender as your player of the season. But there was just no other names that had played consistently enough and had performed consistently enough. You know, Jeremy Kelly spent a long time out injured, otherwise you'd probably be looking at him. Armando spent a long time out injured. Russian Hepburn Murphy, when he was in form, was an absolute handful and managed to get to 10 goals to be fair to him, but was injured for a period of the season and also wasn't always in the best form. I think it's fair to say. Other players were in and out or just hadn't performed consistently. So it was almost a process of elimination where you kind of look around and go, well, Charlie Barker's the only player who's probably played 35 games or so. And he's also the only player that's actually can kind of hold his head up high. He's the only one who fits into both of those categories.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's probably where a lot of other people have landed when saying Charlie.
Yeah, I would say Charlie. And considering he's also supposed to go out on loan as well, not even be in the squad, it's just incredible. And hopefully we can keep him. Although if he wants to go to MK Dons to be with his dad, who knows. Best Crawley match you went to, Louis?
Got to be Charlton away.
Yeah,
Charlton away was an all-timer of an away day.
Lots of people have said Charlton away. Somebody said Cambridge away. Somebody said Rotherham. So he said Birmingham away. And somebody said Crawley v Bristol Rovers.
I'm guessing Scott's return.
That'll be it.
Yeah, I can see that. To be fair, that's the first time I was really up for a home game for a long time. So yeah, that's probably quite a fond memory from this season. A season with very few fond memories.
Yeah, and then best Crawley goal you've seen, Louis. So just as so some people put Ibrahim's v Wrexham.
Bradley Ibrahim.
Pretty much everyone's done that. Or Schwammy at Charlton.
Do you know what? That goes under the radar, I think, because I don't know why, but no one seems to have talked about that goal nearly as much as they should have, because it was a ridiculous goal. It was like the techniques and put it perfectly top corner. It's not as good as Bradley Ibrahim's goal. That is going to be very hard to top. I think that's the best goal I've seen at Broadfield in a long time. If it wasn't for that, that's probably goal of the season.
Probably. And just quickly then, what's been your best Crawley related moment of the season, either off or on pitch?
Oof. That is really. I mean, Scott coming back is obviously a highlight.
Yeah.
Releasing that news at midnight was a very funny move from the club. I thought it just made me laugh. The fact that we couldn't even wait till the morning. I think Tom Allman might have come out afterwards and said we didn't want it to leak, so we wanted it to be a surprise to everyone. So we just announced it as soon as we could, rather than letting it leak in the morning, which I think is quite
So lots of people put about Scott coming back. So put half time away at Exeter. Scott's return announcement at midnight. Somebody put the car park boxing world championships.
Cross, did we even was that would have been after the Cambridge game, wouldn't it? We didn't even have time to.
It would have been.
There's been so many ridiculous things this season. It's like
been a whirlwind.
Yeah.
But no doubt we'll be catching up later as we look ahead to next season. The rumours have already started. I've just seen on social media there's a rumour about Jack Rolls going to India.
Cross, I didn't think you were going to say that. I didn't know where you were going with that sentence, but I didn't think you were...
So a Twitter account that was made May 2024 has just said that this person's had talks with Jack Rolls' agent, and they said that this team called Hyderabad FC in India.
That's the Indian Premier League, I believe.
Has high interest on bringing him to India next season.
So I found the account. Also, funnily enough, the account is Reuben8787. So
it's actually me.
Yeah, well, it's not spelled the same.
Apparently, we're not willing to leave him permanently, and
a loan deal is expected.
Apparently, Jack Rolls has heard a project of Hyderabad FC and said them to wait for a few days. Negotiations are progressing well between the clubs, and he could be, according to this person, he could be game-changing a signing if that happens.
That is, I mean, it's one of those I think we can just... It's very funny because it's obviously a random Indian football Twitter rumours account, and I like the fact they've heard of Jack Rolls and they've decided that's the player that they're gonna.
It's like the thing where you literally, when sometimes on social media it'd be like, here's a list of like 31 players. What's your date of birth?
Yeah.
And what's your battery percentage? This is the club they're going to.
This is your deadline day signing.
Yeah.
It's that is wonderfully niche and random. Yeah. It's
Well,
I don't even know what to make of that. If it happens, it's quite funny. If it doesn't happen, then I'd be surprised if it does actually happen, because Scott was quite keen to recall him, and he used him quite a lot towards the end of the season.
I like Jack a lot.
And I think he's probably a better player now than he was a couple of years ago. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't necessarily want to see him starting in League Two if we were to have ambitions of going back up, but certainly as an option off the bench, as a rotation option to play, make maybe 10 starts a season, come off the bench for the rest of the time. I think you can certainly do worse, particularly given he knows the club, and he is someone who can change games. He's got a goal in him, to be fair. So that's where it account. Maybe it's seen his goals against Swindon, and maybe his goal in the playoff semi-final last year at MK. Maybe they've seen those, and very very random, very niche, quite enjoyable.
Well, thanks very much, Louis, for joining me this evening for part
Pleasure
2.
As always.
And that's the end of the Crawley Town Supporters Alliance Simply Reds Season 2. Don't really know where the year's gone, but no doubt we'll be back in the next coming weeks, whether we look at trying to interview some people, who knows what we'll end up doing. But thanks for all your support, and we'll catch you next season. So come on, you Reds.
Until then, come on, you Reds.